Decisions. We're finally at the part of the offseason where teams have to start making decisions as early as today. The Guardians will have some decisions to make. We'll talk about what those could be and some other decisions they'll have to make coming up this week and pretty relatively soon this month.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. No new customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today.
On today's Locked On Guardians, we'll talk about the Guardians' first decisions they'll have to make for the offseason. We'll talk about where there's going to be room to add, where that might come from to the roster, and we'll also kind of discuss what needs to be Cleveland's top priorities this offseason in terms of moves, roster moves, and players they need to consider right off the bat on their offseason decision list.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun things to discuss. Thank you for joining us today. For those who do not know me, I'm Jeff Ellis, one of your two co-hosts here, one of the first people brought in to talk about baseball for Locked On. Before that, I was a lead draft and prospect analyst at Scout and 24/7.
I'm Justin Ladd. I've been covering the Guardians minor league system since 2007. You might have read me at places like Guardians Baseball Insider, currently at Next Year in Cleveland on Substack, and also on Morning Journal, the News Herald. And thanks for being part of Locked On Guardians. So whether you're a first-time listener or you're an OG or a just an everydayer, we appreciate all of you. And
not just an everydayer. Everydayers are that nothing just about them. They are just and kind people. We know that much. But
appreciate all of me. And let's be honest, like we're at the point of the offseason right now, and overall, like no one else is talking Guardians baseball. You've got us, you got our friends up at Selby's Godcast, you got another host of podcast in the Cleveland Sphere, which is great. You're not getting the sport, you're not getting Guardians talk anywhere else. So if you need your fix of off-season Guardians content or baseball content in general, we're here, and we're here 5 days a week until I believe middle of December. So if you guys are looking for baseball content, trust me, this is the place you want to be. It's 5 days a week. Jeff and I are always here ready to talk about stuff. And today, Jeff, so a couple of things on the calendar I just wanted to bring up. We saw, Gold Gloves were announced on Sunday night, which I never understand MLB's awards schedule. Like, that just makes no sense. Like, let's put Gold Gloves up against Sunday Night Football, and let's put other awards on random nights. Just very, very zero, like, presentation or promotion. I don't understand that. But here's a little calendar list for you. So Gold Gloves was Sunday night. The GM meetings are starting this week. So that there's always some kind of like, I don't know, I say fruitful discussions, but there's some things that could happen there that wind up coming back to fruition later on. Some groundwork is set there for trades and whatnot. Got award finalists this next week. The Rule 5 deadline, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in the future, not today probably. That's November 19th. The non-tender deadline is November 22nd. We'll talk about that a little bit today. And then winter meetings happen December 8th through 12th. So the first decision, Jeff, the Guardians will have to make on Monday is whether or not they should extend the qualifying offer to anybody. And the only guy that's a free agent that is even really worth considering the qualifying offer for is Shane Bieber.
Austin Hedges. I'm sorry.
Yes, Austin Hedges will go out and get. I should know the number, but we looked it up last week.
It's like how much you get with the qualifying offer?
Yeah. What do other teams have to give?
If he gets a $50 million contract,
you get a first comp pick, a free agent comp
only
pick.
If you are like Cleveland, like if you're a team that gets a competitive bounce pick. Everyone else, it doesn't matter. Like if you're the Dodgers, it doesn't matter what they sign for. But if you're a team that would get a first round pick, then it matters.
Yeah. So watch out for Austin Hedges. This $50 million deal from somewhere, from Red Bull, probably from Red Bull. No, I think we agree. Shane Bieber is probably the only guy in this list that you're considering this with because. Well, no, isn't it? Yeah, I don't think he's getting $50 million. So maybe we're wasting our time with this one.
Yeah, I don't think he does. And I think that's because that's the thing. Like,
what are we even doing here? Now I got the numbers wrong.
Well, here's the thing. Even if he just signs, so if he doesn't get the $50 million, you don't get a first. I believe it's then you get the one at the end of Comp B too. You get that like kind of, basically a third round pick instead of getting that like borderline first round pick. So, I mean, there's still some value to it, but I don't think the potential payoff is going to be enough to make it work. Because I agree. I don't think he's getting 50 million. I don't think anywhere I've seen is even considering that with him. It's a little bit different, I'll say, than Brandon Woodruff a year ago, where it was a slam dunk because Brandon Woodruff was a late injury and they knew he wasn't going to pitch this year. Whereas with Bieber, it's like, well, yeah, a team can sign him and he will be pitching for them next year unless something goes terribly wrong. So there is that.
Yeah, so it is less than 50 million. The team like Cleveland who gets competitive balance money, you would get a B, but so it's before the third round.
Yeah.
I think because the question would be whether or not Bieber would accept a qualifying offer. And I don't think he would, because I think he'd be looking for some security.
No, I think he'd take it.
You think he would take it for 1 year?
21 million. Yeah. He's probably going to get something closer to like a prove it contract with the buyout anyways, that I don't think he's probably only looking at something like a 2-year contract. That's something like maybe max like 25 million in guarantees. Why not take 1 year at 21? Right. Like, I don't think he's getting, I think he accepts it in a heartbeat if you give it to him.
I think the issue with that for me is this is all to how Bieber feels. And like, he's probably not going to come back until June at best.
Yep.
If you take I understand the money up front is good, but you're trying to also set yourself up for free agency next year. You're coming back in June. If you come back and you're coming back in June, you're getting a truncated year and you may not have your best stuff right away because you're coming off Tommy John. I would be wanting more security in the second year because I'm trying to set myself up for a better foray into free agency than he's getting this year. So by accepting that qualifying offer, yeah, he wouldn't get it again next year. So he goes into free agency without that hanging over his head, which is good for him, which is good for all players. You don't have that hanging over your head. More teams are interested. And I suppose June through September, October, hopefully.
I mean, we just had an off-air discussion about Matt Boyd and how much he would get based on, and you thought for sure he'd get a 2-year deal based on what he showed, if not a 3-year deal. And you're talking about Bieber having the same length of opportunity and even more time.
Well, the reason I'd say with Boyd is Boyd's older pitcher and it's his last chance to cash in. Bieber, I think, going to free agency after next season, I don't know. I think he might want a clean slate going into free agency in terms of having pitched a full year with his best stuff. Like, you're not guaranteed to come back with your best stuff the next year. And again, you're going to have a truncated year. I would think he would want a better step into free agency. So
he's not going to get 2 years. Like, even if he's bad next year, he's still probably going to get 10 million. That's 35 total million. He's not going to get a 2-year contract worth 35 million. Like, that 25 million is going to be more than he can get anyways. And if he pitches great, then he's in a place to make even more. So I think there's low risk for him.
If you negotiate a 2-year deal or it's a 1-and-1, even if you can structure it in a way where if he hits a certain set of innings, a certain set of stats, you can have it where the contract doesn't come into play for next year. He gets to go into free agency. You can set it up in a way that works for both parties where they share a little bit of risk. And if he pitches really well, maybe there's some, out clause for him going into 2024. Maybe there's a mutual option depending on how things go. So if he pitches really poorly, then, he gets to go back into free agency and it wouldn't have worked out anyway. And if he pitches really well, he gets to go into free agency and on a good note. I just think there's an interesting conversation to be had about whether or not it all depends on how confident he is about himself coming into 2025. Like, is he going to bet on himself and think that, okay, if I go for a 1-year deal, especially if it's like the qualifying offer, do I feel like I'm going to come back with my best stuff and show enough June through September, or maybe October, to push myself into a better set of situation in going into 2025 offseason into free agency? Or do you want some security knowing that, okay, there's a good chance I come back this year and I'm not my best and I won't have a good platform for free agency next year, but I might have a better platform for free agency in 2026 because I'll be back in 2025 or 2026 with a year under my belt after Tommy John. I'll be ready to go again.
You don't turn down
he'll
the
be
money.
A year older.
You just don't turn down that much money. With his history of injuries, you don't turn down 21 million.
See, but I think, okay, you're right. So if you The qualifying offer is $21 million. You take $21 million now, or do you try to structure it where you're getting like $21 million over 2 years plus a lot of incentives, where you could potentially make more money over the 2 years than you would? The 1 year annual average value, I guess, does appeal, but
I just don't know if he can negotiate that as well with his history. Like, I think in this case, you just take the money because you don't know what the market's going to dictate either. And we saw guys get frozen out last year, and partially because, one of them, Blake Snell, had a history of injuries. So I think
it's a thin pitching market for sure this offseason. It's very thin.
I think it's better than last year's.
Maybe. I think you're right. The biggest thing for Bieber is the argument against it is he missed half of 21, most of 23, and most of 24, or almost all of 24 with injuries. So like, you're not talking about a guy who just missed a year or even a year and a half. Like you said, he's missed 3 of the last 4 years with significant time and injuries. So that significantly hampers his free agent market going into this offseason, which again, to me, begs the question why you wouldn't try to negotiate a 2-year deal or of some sort of 2-year deal, like you said, where there's some sort of option, because I'd rather platform myself into free agency the next year coming back off of a full year removed from this.
And he will when he signs with the Dodgers. Like, that's what's going to be what happens. I mean, I'll call it now. That's a team with the history.
But is he going to get more than 20 million from them? 21 million?
No, he's not. But Cleveland's not going to offer him.
You're saying if he gets a 2-year deal, it's not going to. A 2-year deal wouldn't eclipse 21 million.
No,
for the Dodgers.
No, not. I mean,
I disagree with that. I think.
I think. Let me put it this way: guaranteed money, no, it's not eclipsing 21 million in guaranteed money. Because I think it's a 1-on-1 with a buyout, so I don't think it's eclipsing 21 in guaranteed money, because it's probably going to be something like 15 million for next year with a $5 million or $4 million buyout, with the chance for next year to be like 25 million. So it's like 2 years, 40 with that. But I don't know. I've always heard reports that he wanted to go to the West Coast anyways. The Dodgers have a history of giving these types of contracts. They also need some pitching depth.
Pitchers too.
And Cleveland's not giving him the qualifying offer, because I do think there's a good chance he accepts. But yeah, so it's like, I mean, I'll call it now. My prediction is Bieber to the Dodgers for 2 years, 20 million guaranteed, 40 million potentially.
Interesting. I don't know how I feel. I mean, I don't think they'll give him the qualifying offer. I don't think they will, but I think he would end up getting more money than that if he goes on a 2-year deal. But there could be like mutual options. There could be all kinds of things in play that push the money over that. So I don't know. It depends on how much he wants to really bet on himself. And I think he's got the right agent, like the Rosenhaus situation. They're definitely going to push that hard, but we'll see how people respond to the injury history with missing 3 of the last 4 years. And there's a chance that he's the best free agent pitcher on the market, right? Like, I mean, I know technically Garrett Cole opted out of his deal.
I mean, Blake Snell, when he's right, I think is better. I think that, it's like Shane hasn't been quite the same guy. Like, that's the other thing to point out. It's like, those were 2 great starts, but his last 2 years before, I mean, 2022, he was good, but he was not great. And 2023 was another disaster. So I don't know if I would feel quite comfortable saying that.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Flaherty's a free agent. That's fair. Corbin Burns. Oh, I lied. Never mind. Corbin Burns is actually a free agent. So never mind. I take that back. Corbin Burns is the best free agent pitcher on the market. And there's an argument for Jack Flaherty to be number 2 and Snell to be number 3.
I think it's Snell than Flaherty. I think Flaherty, it's like, I mean, he has had a lot of down years. Like,
so there's a chance that Shane is like the 4th best pitcher on the market. Although Verlander and Scherzer, I think, are free agents as well, but they're also in their 40s.
Father Time, I think, is.
I don't really know how to evaluate them. It's just going to be an interesting market. So the Guardians have until, if you're listening to this on Monday before 5:00, Cleveland has until 5:00 to decide on that. They've got another bunch of decisions they also have to make. We will talk about those. We'll talk about where they'll have room to add, or they may not have room to add. We'll also talk about who they need to prioritize. Is Shane Bieber someone they should prioritize this offseason? We will get to that all coming up.
But first, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So you get a hunch in the middle of the game. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, a couple other decisions we should get to first. I'm not sure when this has to happen. We've talked about it before. There's no injured list in the offseason, so all the guys that were on the injured list, which right now is Trevor Stephan, Sam Hentges, and James Karinchak. I'm not sure when the timeline is for like them to have to re-add it. I think it might be today on Monday.
It feels like teams have started doing
decisions.
it.
Yeah, technically Cleveland hasn't yet, as of when we're recording this Sunday night. So we'll see. But that takes up their 3 spots that are open on the 40-man roster. The question, I think, really is obviously Stephan's coming back, guaranteed. The question is will they re-add both Hentges and Karinchak? Because obviously Hentges is going to miss all 2025. Is there a chance for them to non-tender him and give him Anthony Ghost type deal where you do like a minor league deal for 2 years and the back half of it is a little more advantageous for them and they give him security during his rehab? And that's also a risk. If you decide to non-tender him, you open him up to being able to negotiate with other teams. So, and they still have his arbitration rights, which hasn't all gone through yet either. So that's a risk too if you decide to non-tender him. But that does give them some flexibility roster-wise to put him in the minors, and also it probably comes in because his projection I think was like, I don't know the number off the top of my head.
2.1
his was
or 1.9.
It was 1.4. It was 1.4.
Even lower. Okay.
So I think you can come in out of that 1.4 with him this year. You can make it like $2 million, where most of it comes in, whatever, over 2 years. And then James Karinchak's projected at 1.9. I think you and I both agree. I'd be surprised if he is re-added to the roster. I feel like they would non-tender him because he didn't pitch all this year, and I don't know, I just don't see them spending $1.9 million on James Karinchak. And like you said, they're going to make that decision pretty quick.
Yeah, more and more I lean towards keeping Hentges, just because I think if you try to negotiate a deal or you try to cut him, like I said, I brought up before. Again, we sometimes spend an hour beforehand talking. It's like the Dodgers, right? Like JP Fireeisen, former Guardians prospect, the best player the Yankees got for Andrew Miller. That he was someone they claimed a year in advance because it's easy just to stash him once the season begins. It's like the first day of spring training. You're on the 60-man for the rest of the year. Like and he's kind of a low-cost guy. And we talked about this time a year ago that he was the most important guy in their bullpen. Now health has been a continued issue. So at 1.4, more and more I'm leaning towards you just don't mess around with it. It stinks you lose that year, but you know what? Next year is at 1.4 again. And it's a pretty cheap cost. Stephan, as you said, they've got a guaranteed contract. He's going to stay around. And last year we questioned keeping 99 on the roster. I think at this point, there's just no point. He was never even close to returning.
No, I don't think Karinchak, and you were saying off air too about just moving him before the deadline. I wonder if I don't even know. You're probably not trading him either because he has no.
There's nothing. You're just letting him.
There's no trade value either because he didn't pitch all year. So he's just going to go into free agency if I had to guess. And there's other room you can move too, like Connor Gillespie's still on the 40. Peter Strzelecki is still on the 40. Those are all spots.
Yeah, you got to kind of figure out. We talked about Freeman or Schneemann. You probably only should keep one because you're going to need to have. I mean, Freeman's out of options, right? Or does he still have one?
No, he got sent down late enough in the season where he retained his option.
So then it's just Strzelecki who's out of options that they have to kind of come to a decision on. Then, right?
Yeah, he's out of options. Yeah, he didn't have any. This is his last option year. But then you got guys like I said, you got Connor Gillespie, who you don't need to hold a 40-man spot for either.
Agreed.
Before we get into priorities, Jeff, you were doing some legwork on payroll numbers, everyone's favorite topic, payroll. But the real question we were kind of discussing is like, okay, obviously there's going to be a reduction in TV money for them going from Bally or FanDuel Sports, whatever we're calling it these days, and being produced by Major League Baseball. So they're going to miss money there. We don't really know how much impact attendance figures are going to be. Like, yeah, the attendance was up this year. I surely have no idea. And I know everyone hates. I hate talking about payroll because it's just one of those things that we can't control, and saying anything is unproductive on our end. But Cleveland ended the year with what, a little over $100 million payroll. If you want to look at Spotrac, they're projected somewhere in the 91 range as of right now. That includes arbitration. That includes some pre-arb raises. It also includes, it assumes like guys like Connor Gillespie or Juan Brito and some minor leaguers are also getting paid $800K, which they technically won't if they're in AAA, but that's not really consequential. But the question really is, like, with guys coming off the books, like, we assume they're going to re-sign Hedges. You're going to dump Karinchak. Bieber's off the books for now. And, Carrasco's off the books, and Cobb and Boyd, they're off the books for now. Like, where do you think they sit in terms of space where they could get back to what their payroll was a year ago?
So what I did is I looked at kind of prorated money, and it's like, you got to realize that Cobb's money we're taking off, but we also have to do a full year paying Lane Thomas with his arbitration increase, looking at contract increases and all of that. And I'm assuming that 99 is not kept on the roster. If I go through and just went through all of that math on a very basic, I'm not going super in depth, but on a very basic level, it's like using 99 and a few other, and Shane Bieber and, like one or two other players who are coming off the roster. And I did not count Austin Hedges in that because I thought he might be back at the same amount. So I didn't subtract Hedges money. That canceled out most of the ARB increases, and that canceled out most of the salary increases. So I left you with the Juan Segura money. I
forgot about Gene Segura.
Gene Segura. It leaves you with it's all the guys, the Laureano money that they paid this year, and the Scott Barlow money. And you combine those three guys, that's about $18.25 million. So that is kind of the difference. And then I just kind of did some this year. Their increase in attendance was about 200,000 fans. If you want the 222,196 last year, they averaged about, in 2023, the average ticket price was $31. So that would give you an increase of about almost $7 million if that 200,000 times 31. So, I mean, yeah. So on one level, you're like, oh, 25 million, but we don't know about the TV situation. There was some talk a year ago that held them back. If that's the case, then they should be able to spend that full 25 this year, or just about that, because last year they ended up getting bailed out on almost all of that TV money, and then they didn't spend up to that TV money. So I think that, like, if they were already prepared for it last year, and then they kind of, like I said, they got bailed out, they got extra money, and maybe that's what allowed them to go out and add guys at the deadline. So then that could change some views on things. But I think you should expect about 18 million. Like I said, if they invested that almost full amount they got from, which never works that way, but if they invested all of that, then you're up to about 25. And if you do one of those trades, as I talked about with Josh Naylor last week, go back and listen to those shows, that gets you up to 37 million. So Juan Soto Derby, here we come. I'm kidding.
No, you heard it here first. Jeff said Guardians are on Juan Soto. Go and tweet it.
Here's the thing: 37 million. I got us up to 37 million. That's still not getting you anywhere. That Juan Soto isn't even answering that call for 37 million a year for the next 20 years. That
he's still
doesn't
blocking
work.
your number.
Yeah, you're not even. He's like, no, thank you. But yeah, if you, and a lot of people I know in the comments, to go back to that show, talked about this idea of, well, you can't replace him. I'm like, I don't know. Carlos Santana won a Gold Glove this year and had the same WRC plus now age and things. And I think Josh will be better than Carlos next year. But I think it is interesting when you look at the numbers that the only downside to all of this is this team is one thing I will say they're atrocious at, and that's free agency. So I also don't know if I trust them to go and invest 25 million.
And we know free agency is a fool's game. Like you get your Manny Machados and your Bryce Harpers and your Juan Sotos.
If you're buying at the top of it, it's not. But when you're trying to navigate the middle, you always lose.
It's a mess. You get and we talked about before, the Edwin Encarnacio thing fell into their lap, and that worked out good. And you still ended up trading him at the end of the contract, which is fine. It worked out how it needed to work out, but they just haven't run in any situations that have worked out. I mean, Bourne and Swisher never worked out for them.
Those fell in their lap. Deals. Those were kind of similar in a weird way to the Encarnacion ones. Like,
I mean, they were pretty aggressive on Swisher. Bourne, I would say Bourne fell in their lap because it
Swisher was about the same timeline as Edwin. Those are both around Christmas. So about the exact same time.
But Bourne was before spring training. So that one,
that one
fell in their lap. Yeah, so I think they targeted Swisher Whereas they wanted Edwin, but they knew that it was going to have to come into a certain level for them. So yeah, free agency, it's always a fool's bet. Like sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes you got to be a little bit more cautious in terms of money, especially this franchise. Like they can't afford to, the way they operate, they can't afford to be sunk under certain costs because they're just not going to recover from it. Like look at how the Travis Hafner and Jake Westbrook deals hampered them, and then the Swisher and Bourne deals hampered them forever.
And even the Josh Bell deal.
Yeah, and yeah, because you had to sit on Gene Segura for a year, and he did nothing all season. He just, he was on vacation all year, which is great for him. Would love that job. All right, so that's kind of like we talked about roster spots, talked about payroll. That's all kind of that. We'll see how that comes into play. I mean, Chris Antonetti said nothing about payroll at the end of the season media session. Like there was no, what do you guys think you'll do payroll wise? And there was no answer because they're never going to give you the answer. So it's like I said, it's an unproductive conversation, but I think the numbers Jeff did are worth talking about because at least it shows you they have money coming off the books. You have Barlow's off the books and Laureano and Segura and all those guys at least give you a little bit of breathing room, hopefully for something. And maybe that's even a trade, right? Like maybe it's not even free agents. Maybe it's just you're adding salary in a trade. There's always that side of things too. So don't just look at free agency. Maybe you're taking on a contract that they shouldn't take on another bad contract, but I mean, they could trade for somebody that already does have money coming in on that one. So that could be it. We will talk about who the Guardians need to prioritize, not necessarily trading or free agents, but like what areas of the roster do they need to prioritize, and maybe some players specifically. We'll get into that all coming up in just a second. Lots of sports action going on this fall. MLB playoffs are over, but basketball, Cavs, man, they're 7-0. They're a lot of fun. Those are games that are going to be high priced. They're going to be high attended because they're playing great. The vibes are all good. The vibes are good over at Gametime Picks, though. You can get Cavs tickets over at Gametime Picks, and they're going to tell you, you can see your favorite teams play, and it's going to tell you where the best picks are. Best seats are for any individual game. You don't have to waste time looking through tickets to see like cheaper deals or based on where you want to sit. It's going to tell you what the best option is based on what you want to spend or based on where you'd like to sit. It's going to really take a lot of the guesswork out of it, which is the best thing with Gametime is they take the guesswork off. And I really always enjoy the all-in pricing, so I know exactly what I'm going to pay to go to an event. And honestly, too, if you want to go to a Cavs game, if you want to wait till the last second, the prices always go down right before the tip-off starts. So, like, go on Gametime, decide if you're going to go or not, check the prices. If it's 6 o'clock and it's at 7 o'clock tip-off, you might see prices go down. And hit up Gametime, grab your tickets there, and head down there. It's a lot of fun, and it's an easy app to use, and it helps you make decisions last second. And again, it takes the guesswork out. That's the whole thing with Gametime. It takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So on top of all the things I talked about, you also get $20 off that first purchase. So terms apply. But again, create the account and redeem our code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Not Dame time. It's game time, or Don time, as it was for the Cavs the other night. At least there's that going on right now. We talked a little bit about Shane Bieber's impending free agency and I really think it's a complicated situation. I think the Bieber free agency is really weird because of the time missed and the market and the money of all of it. Like it's a tough situation for the teams and for him, because I really am curious to see how teams prioritize him. For Cleveland, Jeff, let's just say Cleveland had to pick between the two, and I'm sure they're not going to re-sign both. So this is probably not a hypothetical. It probably is an either or. Are you prioritizing trying to use money to bring back Bieber or Boyd? Are you prioritizing any sort of flexibility money-wise you might have to shore up the rotation? Alex Cobb is there. Let's just assume they're not signing Corbin Burns because we know better. Are you prioritizing anybody else? Are you prioritizing seeing what you can do with Josh Naylor on the trade market? Like, where are you putting your priorities to start? Because, again, my guess is you're not re-signing both Boyd and Bieber. It's going to be one or the other. And I feel like they have to prioritize the rotation because it was such a mess a year ago. And I know you got Logan Allen and Tristan McKenzie and Gavin Williams and all that stuff, but like you need a guy in the rotation that you feel good about behind Tanner because everybody else is a question mark right now.
The one thing I will say, I mean, they're all question marks. Like that's where it starts. It's like, Cobb is super old. He had some effective moments. He had some terrible moments, and he had a ton of health issues. Matt Boyd has had like one really effective year, maybe two in his whole career, and he's already 34. Just talked Shane Bieber has spent 3 of the last 4 years hurt, and really only one of those 4 years was effective. I'm kind of wait and see on all of them. Maybe, and I know that's what people hate because they hate that the Guardians do that.
That wasn't the question, Jeff. The question
offseason.
is who you're prioritizing.
None of them. I don't think you can prioritize or make any of them important because you can't count on any of them. If I'm going to go out and spend on a pitcher in free agency, it's got to be someone you can count on. And none of those are guys you can count on. Those are all gambles. And if I'm going to sit there and spend money on a player or give money to a player in free agency, I know it's not the deepest group. And, Michael Wacha is now off after signing with Kansas City. And I do, I should go and look. My big problem is a lot of the write-ups included a bunch of guys who were never going to hit free agency. So it made the lists not as good as they should be. But I don't think you can't spend money on that much risk. We talked about this team cannot afford to gamble with risk. And that's a super risky group. Like I'm going to take the Guardians approach that everyone hates, and I'm going to sit there and wait and see who's still standing. I'm going to keep in contact with guys, and maybe I come back around. I probably lean towards Boyd, honestly, of that group, just because I feel like cost versus safety is the best combination there. Like he at least has had more years of being a solid armed guy. If you're ignoring recent health issues. And age, then he's probably the one who's been the sturdiest. But like Alex Cobb is a guy you almost think he might be in camp on a invite at this point due to health from a year ago, and Bieber could
age too.
Yeah, and Bieber could be very pricey. So yeah, I know this is not what people want to hear. That I'm like, I think the Guardians.
Darius Garland's.
I went to Judy in my mind. Shows we're in different places, but that I just think you have to, with all the issues in this rotation, you have to find surety. So if I'm going to pay, I was trying to pull up a list real quick and see if there's any degree of like mid-tier surety. But I get why the Royals went and paid Michael Wacha. Like that guy is good for 150 plus innings a year.
For.
You get
what you pay for.
You're not getting Max Fried. Like we didn't even talk about him. He's probably the number 2 pitcher on this market. So it's Burns, then Fried, then Snell, then Flaherty. Like it's actually better than you think. I mean, honestly, with him opting out, I don't know what it's going to cost, but it's like I might go for Nick Martinez over any of the guys we mentioned. I might.
We did like him on the trade.
Yeah, I might go for see if you can compete with Sean Manaea. I kind of like him quite a bit after his rebound. Like I would rather go for those guys, even though Manaea's had his ups and downs. I will argue that part of that was him pitching in San Diego and in Kansas City before that.
So are you still saying, though, pitching has to be the first priority this offseason?
Yes. It is so unbalanced. Like, if Josh gets hurt, you got Manzardo. The outfield, you're hoping Valera is going to come in next year and, or you could give Rodriguez a shot. Like, those are places where there's depth. I love Messick. I love Peterson. But those guys are still
too much risk if you're trying to compete.
Yeah, they're too far away yet. Like you don't have anyone who can jump in from the minors that I trust to be a starter. And I don't trust Nikhazy and Webb, who they might have to add. It's like those guys are also far away. They don't have a good triple. And I don't trust Allen. I don't trust McKenzie. I don't trust Williams. I trust Tanner and nobody else.
Yeah, it's literally what you're going to get from Tanner, and everybody else is just a wild card. So yeah, pitching has to be the priority this winter. I definitely agree with that. You have to figure out whether that's a trade or whether that's free agency. I do expect them to sign a free agent starter. I think they're going to. I think you have to. You cannot. I mean, the risky thing with Tristan McKenzie is out of options. So like you got to figure that out too. But like I don't know if you realistically want to repeat 2024 and get back to the playoffs and make a deep run. I don't think you can come to spring training and you can't sit there and say, well, we're going to bank on Gavin being healthy this year and taking a step forward. We're going to bank on Logan Allen figuring out his issues. We're going to bank on Ben Lively at age 33, repeating his age 32 breakout. Like, those are not decisions a team that expects to contend for a 2025 deep playoff run makes. I just don't think you can. You cannot trust anything you saw last year.
Yep.
Logan Allen's got options. If he doesn't work out, then he goes to AAA and he figures it out because he wants to get back to the major leagues. And Tristan McKenzie either figures it out or you move on or you stick him in some sort of purgatory role between the bullpen and the rotation. I don't know. But I don't know. If you want to be a serious contender next year, I think you're adding a free agent pitcher. And I don't know if that's Bieber or Boyd. I personally would probably, if I had to pick between the two, I'd probably pick Shane Bieber just because there's more upside. I know there's risk. I know I'm contradicting myself because I said you have to add a pitcher, but I like the upside of Bieber a little bit more. Boyd's 34. And it depends on what you can negotiate too, money-wise. Like, this is Boyd's only chance that he's going to get to cash in the market, and he's got who's his agent? It's Boris. Cleveland's got one Boris client on the roster. It's Gavin Williams. We know how that's going to end in a couple of years. I just don't see them going for Boyd. So I think the option is Bieber. That's who I would prioritize. But you're right. I'd be interested in Sean Manaea. I'd be interested in Nick Martinez. I'd be interested in Nick Pivetta. I think he's interesting as well.
No, agreed. I forgot about him.
There. Michael Lorenzen's out there. We just saw he went for nothing on the trade market. So, like, I know I've seen people talking about John Means, but that's another guy who just is coming off of multiple injuries. So, to me, he's like a minor league invite. And I agree. I would give Cobb a minor league deal and see if it works out, but I'm not giving him anything more than that. I don't think he's going to get more than that, but I'd be willing to see how that works out. All right, well, we'll talk more about that in the coming days. There were Gold Gloves announced on Sunday, as we said. Andres Gimenez is a Gold Glover again, no shock there. Stephen Kwan, Gold Glover again, no shock. And then Rocchio and Jose missed out. Old friend Carlos Santana gets his first Gold Glove. Good for him. Much over-deserved for him. Long. It's been overdue for him to get one of those. Some stuff from the AFL I wanted to get to. We're just out of time. Tomorrow, Jeff, you're excited about tomorrow's show.
Yeah, we're going to do 10 biggest baseball busts. And we already had a disagreement on this. So you're going to want to tune in. We have different takes on how this grades out. So it'll be a fun one to talk about. I did a lot of research already. So come in prepared. It'll be maybe not fun, but it'll be interesting. I don't think it can be fun when you get into that side of things. I want to thank you all for joining us. Friday's show ticked up over the weekend. Thank you to everyone who joined us late. Hey, we don't care when you join. Just try to join the day of, though, I will say. I guess we do care a little, but we appreciate the support whenever we get it. Make sure to comment, hit the thumbs up, all that fun stuff. Let's help our videos trend, right? That's what we're looking for. Let's go viral. I don't see our shows ever going viral, but I appreciate all of you. Thank you for joining us, and go Guardians, go.